And
Right.
it's time.
Yep, it is time. Mr. Finn, you do the honors.
Well, he's here. He's here in studio, and it is Professor Peter Sibilio, and of course the host of Bible Basics, and a very special opportunity for him to gather in studio with us. Good morning, Peter.
Now, saying that I'm here, law enforcement cannot take advantage of that. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah,
His car is parked in an undisclosed location.
Someone was saying, "Hey, was that you jogging down the street?" And I said, "Was there a bill collector behind me?"
If there's a bill collector, you're running, not jogging.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
But wow, so much is going on. You know, if I could not get a ticket, I think, for the Annunciation or the raising of Lazarus, I definitely would make sure to get a ticket for the big event in May.
Oh, yeah,
go,
there you
yeah.
go. There you go.
But you look at the calendar, and that's what we've got going on. It's amazing. Not only the Annunciation today, but the raising of Lazarus last Sunday.
Yeah.
Something called Passion Tide. If you went to a church observing the tradition, the icons and the statues were covered. I thought St. Joe's Maumee was moving. I was like, oh, I guess they're moving into that new parish center, you know. But of course, we have a little bit of difference, of course, with the East. And when we celebrate some of these things, we all put Lazarus right before Palm Sunday. As we should, but we know that, of course, there's a little bit of difference many years between exactly when we celebrate that Palm Sunday and Easter, and it kind of goes back to Nicaea in a sense. One of Nicaea's thesis statements is that it's Sunday over Saturday because we're no longer bound by the Jewish calendar.
Right.
I always get that across to students by saying we still feel the effects of our Jewish roots. And if you don't believe me, we can all come to school on Saturday and
Right.
Sunday. And then they're like, oh, that's why we get those. We
Right.
just thought the calendar came with 2 days off. You know, but it really shows how ingrained all of this is, even in our secular life. And then, of course, we also know that in the West, we sort of update the calendar. We find out that the Julius Caesar solar calendar was about 12 minutes too long. And so then, of course, that's when we start having some bigger differences with the East over dating. But, you know, we're talking about having a common Easter. And that, of course, would be completely wonderful because, of course, we're really getting into that season. You look at the calendar, and we had Lazarus Sunday. We're going to have Palm Sunday. And so, you know, like I've said before, it's okay because we've been training for this.
Right.
We've been training for this all Lent. And when we look at Lazarus, even that is a little bit tough to date precisely because in John 10, raising of Lazarus, John 11, John 10, Jesus is almost stoned at Hanukkah and in Jerusalem. And so he goes back to the wilderness near Jerusalem, probably where he was baptized. John 11, he goes to Bethany, which is about 10 miles away, raises Lazarus. But then in John 12, he has to come back into Bethany to have a wonderful feast. And so we think perhaps Jesus may have stayed out by the tombs and they get the celebration ready for him in John 12. But that, of course, is 6 days before the Passover, which would be right near something called the Great Passover in Jewish tradition. Even as early as Jesus' time, the Sabbath before the Passover was called the Great Sabbath, where Elijah was thought to perhaps appear. And of course, you read Malachi in the synagogue about the day of the Lord and how it will be terrible. But in fact, what's going to happen is it's going to be terrible for Jesus. Not so much the conquering hero, but the hero who suffers death to conquer death. And we're getting ready for all of that. And so
Exciting.
there's also a lot of reasons for that mysterious, super short verse, perhaps the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. You know, is it because he knows what's about to happen? Is it a sort of theological truth that he sees the power of sin in the world and death connected to it, or I think just, he's a human being. Right. Death is sad. Everyone else is crying, and he cries in sympathy with them. Mm-hmm. But we know that though Lazarus rises because of Jesus, he will die again. And so Jesus is about to die so that we, and Lazarus will rise again too. And we really want to go on that journey with him.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Peter.
Truly my pleasure. Truly my pleasure. And my passion. No pun intended.
Yes. Oh, man.
I just find it amazing how soon after Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, Jesus is going to die. I mean,
absolutely.
The time frame on those two events.
Absolutely.
It never struck me until this year, and I don't know why, but it never struck me until this year that those two events were so, just in time, so closely tied together.
So intertwined, and that foreshadowing of even before Lazarus, Jesus is almost killed illegally.
Yeah, right.
Via stoning in Jerusalem. And then we find out that, of course, his trial was rigged.
Yeah.
And he actually has the courage to sort of break open his identity for him at the worst possible time. He prayed, may this hour pass. They can't convict him until he says, I am the Son of the Blessed. Yeah. And you'll see him riding against you. We better be on Jesus' side and by his side.
Don't forget to be listening for Bible Basics each and every day. A wonderful short way for you to get your questions answered about the Bible from Peter Sibilio. Thanks, Professor Pete.
Thank you, Professor Pete.